Okay, so I don't think you need to write everything on this slide. I would just write something that you feel is useful to you. Like I'm never going to quiz you on what the absolute value definition is, but it's helpful to know what that is so that you can understand these answers. So what absolute value is basically it's the distance from 0 on a number line. Okay, so how far away is -5? How many spaces is -5 away from 0? 5. So the absolute value of -5 is 5. How far away is a +5 from 0 on a number line? 5 spaces also. I think the biggest mistake people make here is they think, oh yeah, absolute values change the negative to a positive. The problem with thinking that way is that when I give them this one, they change it to a negative. That's wrong. So I guess a better way of thinking about it is it always makes things positive. But so I'll pause here and let you guys write what you feel you need to get down. Okay, so what numbers have an absolute value of 9? What could I plug in here so that I get 9? You could plug in -9. What else could you plug in? No. If you plugged in 0, the absolute value of 0 is just 0. So that won't give me 9. Just +9, right? So basically, how many answers do I have? There's 2, right? I see some pencils moving. I'll let you guys write that. Okay. So now my next question to you would be, what numbers have an absolute value of -9? Good, good. So that's a good answer, and I'll hold on to that one. But is there anything I can just plug into the inside? That's what I'm looking for. What number can I just plug into the inside so I get -9? 9?
I know none.
9? Oh, none? None is right. Good. Darn. None and 9 sound a lot alike. Maybe I should change the number. All right. So there's no solution here. Now, Gabriel said it would work if you had a negative out here. That's true. But we're not allowed to put. I didn't want to include that. I just think of what can you plug in the answers. That's not possible. So an absolute value cannot equal a negative number. You could plug a negative number inside an absolute value. You just can't get a negative number out of an absolute value. Okay. Okay. Let's start off with some example problems here. So go ahead and write down your directions there. Number 1. It's all review stuff. You guys should have seen this before at some point, but I do like to review these. These are things that, even though we've seen them before, students do tend to have a difficult time remembering how to evaluate these and solve these things. I'm going to start off with some basic ones, and we'll move up to a little bit more challenging ones. That'll be it for today. Probably be a fast day. Okay, so the difference here on number 1 is that I've replaced the question mark. Sure. The difference in number 1 from the slide that I just showed you earlier is that instead of a question mark, I've got an X here. Okay? So now the question now to you then would be, what can X be? In other words, what can this be so that when I take the absolute value of it, I get 4? What's the answer?
4 and -4.
You get 4, and you get -4. Okay? Now a short way to write that is like this, right? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at number 2. Absolute value of x equals -3. No solution. Absolute values can't equal negative numbers, right? That's not possible. Go ahead and write down number 3. Can I clear this stuff off, guys? Any objections? All right. So now number 3 is going to be a little bit different. And yet a little bit the same. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's backtrack a little bit. You guys remember this? If the absolute value of x equals 4, that means that x, whatever's inside the absolute value parentheses, right? That means that can equal 4, or it can equal -4, right? Well, same thing over here. It just looks a little bit different. Whatever's in the absolute value, in this case it's x minus 6, can equal what? It can equal 12, or it can equal -12. So now here's where it's different. We still have to solve for x now, because x isn't by itself. But we just add 6 and we're good, right? So that means x can be 18, and x can be -6. So this one's different because you don't get the same number twice, just with opposite signs. Okay? You do up here, right? You get 12 and -12, but your final answer, you end up with different numbers, right? So that's that. Go ahead and write down number 4 there. Scribe. Scriba. Any objections to erasing? Then I shall. Okay, we have the absolute value of 3 minus x equals 0. Okay. That means whatever is on the inside here has to have an absolute value of 0. So that means that 3 minus x can equal +0 or -0, right? But what's weird about saying that? 0 doesn't have a sign. There's no such thing as positive or negative, right? So all that means is I'm going to add x just because I think that's easier. But you could do it however you want. But my point here is this, is what do you notice about my answers? They're exactly the same. You only got one answer here, okay? And that's a little note you might want to write. If the absolute value equals 0, we will only have one answer. Zero is unique, right? Because the way they define absolute value is distance from 0, right? Well, every number has a twin on the opposite side of the number line, right? So you always get 2 answers. But when you're talking about 0, well, 0 is the middle. So it's the only one that doesn't have a twin. And so you only get one answer whenever it equals 0. So you don't really need to do this plus and minus. You can, but it doesn't really.
So I got a -3 for the first one.
Well, how'd you do that? Walk me through it.
0 minus 3.
0 minus 3. So you did this, right? I got you.
Oh, we can cancel them, right?
There you go. The negatives go away. All right. So that's that. And now you guys get to show me your skills. So guys, I changed number 2 because it was just a copy of what was already there. So we'll say no solution here because it can't be negative. All right, so that is absolute value. We're going to take it up a notch a little bit here, just a little bit, not a big deal. Let's go ahead and write down example 2, number 1. What is different about these problems from the last set? Anybody? Huh? There's more stuff in it. That's a good answer. I'll take it. More specific, maybe? Where's that extra stuff at? In the front? Or behind it too, right? In other words, it's not inside the absolute value bar. So that's kind of the thing there, okay? We have numbers that are outside of the absolute value bars. That changes things, okay? So let me show you. Well, I was going to show you what you don't want to do, but I won't do that because then people will do it. So, sorry, that was a confusing sentence. But anyway, I'm going to show you what to do. And then I'll show you what a lot of students do that's wrong, and I don't want you to do that. But let's start with what you should do. Let's start it off with the right thing. The right thing is this. You get rid of the numbers on the outside of the absolute value bars first. So how would I get rid of the 2? You would subtract it. Okay? How would you get rid of the 4? You would divide it. Once you've gotten rid of the numbers that are outside of the absolute value bars, then it's just like the problems we had on the last slide. So what's my answer here? Yeah. Notice my final answer, by the way, doesn't have absolute value bars on it. I get a lot of students that leave absolute value bars on their final answer. It's one of those things that make math teachers' eyes twitch a little bit, but we still give you credit sometimes for it anyway. But we see it and we're like, no. Another eye twitcher for math teachers is this. I ask kids, what's the square root of 16? You know what they tell me? It's 4. I start twitching.
How is it not?
The answer is 4, but this shouldn't be there anymore.
Oh,
Yeah, people do that all the time. Same thing here. The absolute value bars go away after you split it. That's it. So, anyway. All right, so what students do that's wrong is they take the problem. Don't write this, okay? I want you to take this from your mind and burn it with anger and fury. Is they split it up like this, and that will not work because the 4 and the 2, they're not inside the absolute value bars, and so they don't get to participate in that process that comes from the absolute value. You have to get rid of the outside numbers first, and then you do the split up, okay? So this is a no-no. So burn that from your mind. All right, let's go ahead and write down number 2 here. And I erase. All right. Okay, so we want to get rid of the outside numbers first, right? What's that? Okay, now what?
Now it's like 1.
Very good. Can't equal a negative. The absolute value can't equal a negative. Okay? Now it's possible to have a negative up here. Like let's say I started with let's say this was a negative, right? I'm going to change this to a positive. Well, it's okay for there to be a negative over there right now. Because as soon as I add the 18, what's going to happen to it? It's going to be positive. So long as you have outside numbers, you can have negatives over here. It's just that when you get down to this step with just an absolute value, it can't equal a negative. So watch out for that. All right, let's go ahead and write down number 3. Number 3 has no solution? Really? I think it might. Let's see. All right, here we go. We have 2 absolute value of 2x plus 3 plus 5 equals 13. Okay, so if I were to ask you guys what's the first step, anybody brave enough to suggest it?
2 minus 5.
Good. That is the correct first step. That's the next step. Divide by 2. Now, here's the thing. A lot of you guys will be tempted to distribute. Don't do that. Don't distribute. So, make a little note here. Don't distribute with absolute values. They're not parentheses, you guys. They're absolute value bars, so it's different. So here's the thing. On this problem, actually, you'll still get the same answer if you distribute. The reason is because the 2 is positive. But if this was a negative 2, if you put that inside, what happens to the negative? It goes away, and now you've got a whole different equation you're looking at. So you violated a math rule. You made a negative disappear and you weren't allowed to. So my advice to you guys is just don't distribute with absolute value at all. Just to get rid of this number here on the outside, divide both sides by it. That's how I would suggest going about it. Okay? There we go. So now we do 2x plus 3 equals negative 4. And 2x plus 3 equals positive 4. And we finish it up. Yep. So we have one answer is negative 7/2. And my other answer is 1/2. So here's our big lesson for this example, okay? Don't distribute with absolute value bars. Divide that number in the front out instead. That's your big takeaway for this problem. So we're going to skip number 4. And let's see what you guys can do with these ones.